Hello everyone, Tactical Edge here. We're checking out another indie game demo today, and this is Tabletop Tavern. This game is what happens when Total War meets Slay the Spire. Combining roguelike deck building with formation combat, but instead of building card decks, you build armies, and then you deploy the armies in battles and command them to victory. As you advance through the path, you encounter different battles and random events to collect units and create unique armies every run. So let's hop right in and check out how it plays. Starting the game, we'll be able to pick our armies from different factions, though it's only a demo, so the selection is limited. We'll be going with the Iron Legion, basically the Steel Faith Gunpowder army, similar to the Empire of Total War Warhammer. I've already played the demo a bit, so I have some extra funds and allowing me to modify the starting army with an additional cavalry unit, and now we can start our run. As you can see in the background, we're literally in the tavern playing some tabletop games, hence the name. Looks like we'll be able to choose an equipment at the start, so we are going to get the Texas BBQ. We want to get some extra melee defense as we will be focusing on melee troops. That should help our infantry hold a little longer in combat. And now for our first battle, going up against the Gretkins, which are the goblins orcs, so kind of like greenskins. Now if you like the Total War franchise, assuming you do if you've already seen some of my past content, this battle interface should be very familiar to you. The classic left click to select, right click to drag and hold for formation, so if you've played Total War before, whichever the title, you should be able to pick up the controls with no issue at all. Now with the formation setup, let's get the battle started. As you can see here, even the alter left click moving units in formation method still works in this game. Now for the battle itself, we do have the numbers advantage there, so I'm not too worried about the battle itself. Our archers are in range, firing at the goblin rabble. Low tier chaff and our swordsmen are more than enough to pin them down. The dire wolves are a bit more tricky because they can do some damage to my archers, so I'll be keeping those field pikemen on the right flank to stop them in their tracks. The front line is going all fine for us. Our swordsmen are holding just fine, especially with the additional melee defense from our gear. Now for a slightly closer up shot. The models aren't too complicated, they don't have the same level of detail like Total War, since after all, this is only a one-person indie game, so they only have so much resources and time to pull into the game. But considering the context, this actually works very well, because these models are essentially tabletop miniatures, played by inhabitants of a medieval fantasy world, so of course they're not going to have the same level of detail as a modern-day Warhammer mini. And on top of that rule for tabletop minis, you're not going to stare at them up close 90%, 99% of the time anyway, so if you fudge up some details, it's totally acceptable, as long as the gameplay is still functional and fun. This first battle was pretty easy. Our swordsmen out-quality the goblin chaff, especially with the firepower support of the bowmen, and our pikemen held the direwolves on the right, with the enemy archers silenced. All in all, a pretty easy first victory for us. Alright, let's see what we're getting for loot. Now this is where the army building happens. In the reward screen, you do have the option to conscript enemy units, but I'm not gonna do that because they're just chaff. I'd rather have a bit more money. Other than that, like a Slay the Spire encounter, you do have a card, or in this case, unit reward for free. We're picking the Milanese pikemen, which is the more elite version of our pikemen, though overall nothing too different. Our next stop will be the campfire, which gives you multiple options. Scouting reveals random events, scavenge gives you consumables, resting heals your units, and training, which is what we're gonna pick, will be able to upgrade your units. Only a random one though, and the exact term is prestige, which basically means your unit now has additional melee stats. Our next encounter is a village, which has a garrison. They only have a few units, so I do want to try out the garrison battle, which is supposed to have walls and gates. Basically a mini siege battle. Now the last time I played this demo, they haven't introduced siege battles just yet, so yeah, I'm pretty new to this. Either ways, we don't have a whole lot of units, so I'm just gonna push them up to the walls and attack the gates with one of the infantry there. The cavalry's gonna stay back, they can't go through walls or fly over it, so their mobility is mostly wasted in a siege. Now again, this is my first time playing the siege in this game, so I did not realize the gatehouses are firing at my troops as well. I should have expected it honestly, but yeah, you can see the spears, the pikemen on either side are just getting poked down by those gatehouses, and then the archers turn around and start firing as well. The pikes on the right are absolutely shredded by the torrent of arrows and even routed away before making into melee. Good news is my swords finally broke the gatehouse. I can finally push my melee infantry into the walls. Also, I finally remember I have cavalry at the back. They're also pushing forward. Bad news is I didn't realize the Milanese pikemen are right in range from the enemy gatehouse on the left, so they're picked off one model after the other, and right before the last model got shot to death, the game ended in my victory. That was close. Seriously, there were multiple gatehouse projectiles in the middle of flying towards this one last pikeman there. If the battle went on even half a second longer, I would have lost the whole unit. But now, it managed to survive and I can heal it back up, especially when I got the Chug Jug item that doubles heal. As for what unit to conscript, I am gonna pick the Sylvan Archers here, since they gave me so much trouble with my spears. Now inside towns you can deposit gold. You can't use them in the run anymore, but you can use it to buy upgrades outside the run, basically acting as a meta progression currency, making your future runs a bit easier. Anyways, next battle. I'm thinking of auto-resolving it because it's just fighting a bunch of chaff, but given how my army is quite tattered right now, I am gonna have to fight it manually to minimize losses. Now the interesting thing about this battle is it's more of a river pass choke point battle, so there's not a lot of room for maneuver. It's more a direct confrontation of firepower and melee prowess. Didn't take long for me to break the wolves at the front line, and my melee troops are now tying down the enemy archers with the archers of my own firing at the enemy archers as well. Pikes and swords clashing with the goblins' green tide, and we are superior in both numbers and strength. So yeah, an easy victory once again. Now from this battle I got another swordman as a battle reward, and with 3 swordsmen I was thinking of combining them into a prestige unit, which is another way to get the prestige stat boost, but at the same time that means I'll lose 2 of the melee units, so I decided against it, moving into the next encounter, which is a shop, where you can purchase items and units. Theoretically, you can purchase some powerful units in here, but the problem is I'm broke, so all I can afford is buy some additional gear, hopefully getting a good buff for my army. An item that reduces common unit pack cost, which in itself is not too bad, but the problem is I still don't have enough money, not even if I sell all my items, so I have no choice but just move on. And then the next encounter, I decided this time I'll leave it to RNG and go for the question mark, a random one, which turns out to be a campfire. Another training, another prestige upgrade without needing to sacrifice any units myself. Another encounter, another garrison. This time, we've learned our lesson from almost losing our Milanese pikemen. So yeah, we're not fighting the garrison here, just entering town and getting a new unit, a Kaiser cannon. Yes, we do have artillery in the game, and this is our gunpowder firepower. Now the next battle, I wanted to auto-resolve this, but also we've got new toys, the Kaiser cannon. So yeah, I'm throwing them into battle and testing out this new artillery. 3, 2, 1, fire! Yeah, the cannons have some pretty good splash damage, hammering the enemy formations as the goblin rabble try to push up. My front line is waiting for them while the artillery is giving them an explosive welcome. Another volley and more splash damage coming in. Now the wolves on the other side is charging into my pike, so I have my flank secured at this point, just need to deal with the enemy infantry. The swordsman will be more than enough, especially when I still have my cavalry in reserve flanking around to run down the enemy archers. And don't forget I have my own firepower, the cannons, and some of my swords dealt with one of the rebel unit and will be focusing down the other one. The wolves have been routed as well, so all that's left are just these archers in the middle. They are also gonna break and giving me a smooth victory. After a battle, we got a 3rd swordsman in our army, and that means we can upgrade our units, combining 3 into 1, giving them better stats in battle. And after that, we are going into another random encounter. This time, we are running into a random battle. I'm just gonna auto-resolve this one because I can't be bothered to fight these low-tier chaff. We took some losses, but that's fine, we can handle that. This time, I'll conscript survivors to try my luck and see if I can get the green tier, the uncommon tier unit. And yep, we are quite lucky. Both of them are in our selection. I'll be grabbing the ones with axe and shield because we have enough spears and pikes. Now one last encounter before the boss fight, going into a town, either the Gruntkin, Orcs and Goblins, or the Talendor Forest. I'm going with the Elves. We're not fighting this garrison, we're not equipped with this at all. Just going into the town, recruiting the units, Alarian Sentinels, kind of reminds me of Phoenix Guards in the Total Warhammer game, or the Arendelle Guard, which reminds me of White Lions, going with the Halberds. Simply because I want to get a rare tier unit, just want to get an elite infantry in my formation there. Now over here, I was about to make a deposit and try to save some gold for upgrade, but then I just quit the panel without actually making the money deposit. So that was a bit dumb on my part, but we're moving into the boss battle against some rare tier Gruntkin units. This is gonna be a little bit tougher, but I think we can outsmart the AI, so let's go into the battle. Now this time our enemy is bringing their own form of artillery, the Gobblepult. Basic catapults with giant rock smashing enemy formations. A rare 2 unit that will be quite good against my infantry units, and we'll have to pay extra attention to try and shut them down. Other than that, there are some armored direwolves, but with some more protection. And then we have a bunch of goblin chaff we've already seen before, scrap shooters, rabble, and here is another elite unit, the Flesh Shredder, Fanatics. Looking quite scary with their glowing red eyes with anti-infantry bonus and the blood frenzy, which really helps them deal extra damage to my infantry units. On the other side, another artillery, the Siege Claws. Not only do they have the same anti-infantry bonus as the Gobblepult, but they also have flaming ammo, which does morale damage, although it seems like the unit info panel is a bit bugged, so we can't really look into the details. The game is still in early access, so it's expected to see some kinks that need to be smoothed out, but it doesn't really interfere with gameplay, so we'll just ignore that. Now let's deploy our army. We want to push our army through the forest and keep our enemies away from this goblin hut thing because it buffs enemy units, so we just march for it as soon as battle begins. We'll set the Kaiser Cannon on the left flank because there's less vegetation and more clear line of sight to perhaps reach the enemy gobble catapult. We also have the Borderland Riders, which have the Outrider trait, which is basically Vanguard deployment in Total Warhammer, and we'll be just dropping them at the far corner of the battlefield. And don't forget to set up our missiles and the units protecting them. Almost forgot to mention, actually, you can see enemy Outrider deployment unit. Anything that is deployed outside of their deployment zone can also be seen. So yeah, setting up our Elven Elite Infantry as the Wolves will just charge straight into them, while we will jump their Siege Claw Catapult with our own Outrider unit. I'm not really in range to hit the enemy catapult, so I'll just be opening fire at the enemy infantry, also pushing out my pikes from the back just to block off the incoming direwolves. And at the same time, my archers just eat a whole volley from those siege claws. Thankfully, I do have my Borderland Riders shutting down this elite artillery, and they should start moving on to the next target, which is another artillery, the Gobblepult. Overall, seems like everything is quite stable for me. I'm successfully keeping the enemies away from the terrain buildings and absolutely hammering the elite infantry with the Kaiser Cannon. We can't really see the damage value, not a whole lot of kills, but no doubt there's a lot of HP damage done to the enemy formation. You can see another volley, another explosion. Those are supposed to be elite anti-infantry unit, by the way, but our swords are holding on. Oh wow, actually I was about to say they're holding on fine, but looks like they are wavering. And that's them fighting a tattered unit of Fanatics and also some Goblin Rabble. If those Fanatics gone into the fight with full health, then this would have been a lot worse for me for sure. But yeah, for now, the Fanatics seems to be routed. My Borderland Riders are shutting down yet another missile unit. The swordsman on the left seems to be routed now. Shame on them, but the ones on the right are holding just fine against the enemy infantry, the Orc Ravagers, which is not a rarity unit, just an uncommon tier, and they are prestige, so they have the extra melee stats to just hold on to the front line, and I'm sending in more units to help out. Ravagers flanking Ravagers, Orc on Orc violence, and seems like the Kaiser Cannon has switched over to fire into the fray. At this point, everything in the Gruntkin backline is routing. I'm sending some spears to chase off the already routed scrap shooters, but that was wasted effort because you don't actually benefit from chasing routed units, unlike in the Total War game where there is a whole campaign. Once the units are gone, they're not going to come back anyways. And over here, what are you doing? Why are you still fighting those Dire Riders, Elarian Sentinels? It looks like they've been fighting these Dire Riders since the start of the game, and they're still duking it out. Not really an efficient killer, I feel like. But anyways, I still managed to win the fight, and that is the end of the last battle in Act 1. Alright, reward time. With greater difficulty comes greater reward. 3 rare tier units. The Ancient Man Regiment, a handgun unit. Black Eagle Halberdiers, an elite anti-large infantry. And the Royal Cavaliers. Let's grab the Shockcav and conscript some more survivors, although we didn't get that lucky this time, only getting a green tier, uncommon tier unit. No rarity infantry or artillery. Also, we ran out of space in our army slots, so we have to kick one of our units out, disband them to welcome our new unit. In the end, replacing our lost Borderland Rider with a new Dire Rider unit, and that is Act 1 completed. Moving on to Act 2. where we'll be facing off a new faction. Now before we start fighting, we do have to pick up some new gear at the start of the act. Nothing really useful here because in Act 2, because it's only the demo version, you can only play the first battle and that's the end of the demo. So it doesn't really matter what we pick, just hopping straight into the next battle against the Sakura Dynasty, which is basically a Japanese-inspired faction. Now before starting the battle itself, let's have a quick look at the Sakura Dynasty units there. You can see we have some foot samurai with their, well, Japanese samurai swords and their samurai armor, a bunch of Ashigaru and a Naginata Onna, well basically translated into Naginata women. Slightly more elite polearms with their anti-large bonuses and whatnot. And at the back there, some Daikyo commoners with their bows and arrows. And that's basically it for the AI army. In contrast, our army is just a mixture of units and factions we picked up from our random adventures. We've got humans, we've got orcs, we've got elves. The roguelike format means every run your unit combinations will be different and unique. Alright, I'm gonna skip the army setup phase and start the action straight away. Pushing out my army here, I'm very confident in just crushing these Japanese themed units. I've got more numbers, I've got better quality, and I'm smarter than an AI, I think. Flanking my mobility around while my infantry frontline will be holding back the enemy units. Buying time for my archers and the cannons to do the job while leaving some of my pikes in reserve in case I need to plug a gap or something. Yeah, just let the cannons sit back, do their thing, while I have my mobility on the top right. They should start moving in and charge down those enemy archers now. There's nothing really stopping them except for the terrain piece, which also buffs the enemy units, giving them extra melee defense. However, once they get in, they do run over and just throws a bunch of bodies around with the charge impact, starting to do damage to the enemy archers, with the spears flanking around as well for a hammer and anvil against the enemy front line. Cannons continue to fire away, aiming at the archers now, while my infantry are starting to take casualties in the front line. Illyrian Sentinels, they're not anti-infantry, but they still have some pretty decent stats and also getting their rear attack advantage here, working their way through those Naginata Onnas. With the swordsmen faltering, I need those pikemen in place to plug the gaps in the front line. Kaiser Cannon continues to fire, starting to hammer some of the archers at the back. One of the archers routed, so those Royal Cavaliers are freed up for a rear charge. Oh, looks like some of the units are acting a little bit weird, but still manage to get into combat. Rear attacking those Naginata Onnas. They themselves are being shot by those arrows from behind, but they do have heavy armor, so that helps protecting them from the enemy missiles. The Naginata Onna starting to break one after the other, leaving only pretty much just those Daikyo commoners shooting from behind. One last charge from the Royal Cavalier, a little bit of a weird charge but still doing good damage on impact. Another volley from the Kaiser Cannon, and that did some friendly fire to my Royal Cavaliers. Small arms fire don't do friendly fire, but I think artillery does, so a little bit unfortunate on my end, but still an easy win for me. Now in the reward panel, we are getting some really good units. The Eisenman Regiment once again appeared, but unfortunately this is the last battle in a demo run, so we don't actually get to use them. We're still gonna recruit them just because, why the hell not? Kicking out one of our archers and replacing them with a much better missile unit. Conscript survivors, more better units coming in. A shame we can't use them right here, but that is why people play the full game when it comes out, right? Again, this is only the demo, and in the full game, there will definitely be more units, more factions you can play, and runs that are a lot longer than what we have right now. And that's the end of the run. We can see we got a lot of gold earned, but we forgot to deposit the gold. Totally on me. If I remembered, I could have gotten more funds and spent them on upgrades and help me with my next runs. But either way, as you can see, I've already got some gold from my previous runs and earned some upgrades. You can see in the customization screens, there will be a lot more options to start with once we get the full game. We will have more heroes, more factions, more units with the option of picking your starting army, your gear loadout and whatnot. The full game of Tabletop Tavern will be featuring a much larger roster. You can already find a lot of those models in the custom battle mode. Their designs compared to Total War Warhammer, of course, is a lot simpler because this is once again a single development project, so limited resources and manpower. You can't hold the two games to the same standards here, but still, these units are completely functional, the gameplay is fun, and there's a lot of variety as you can mix and match different units from different factions and combine them into your unique army. If you like Total War style formation combat, especially with fantasy levels of unit diversity, and the randomness of roguelikes like Slay the Spire, then this might be the game for you. The full game's gonna come out in a few weeks in June, so before then, give the demo a go and see if it's your cup of tea. Anyways, that's all for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed this little indie game spotlight, and I'll see you in the next one. Tacticalich, signing out.